When we're trying to communicate a whiskey to someone, whether they're there with us or not, whether the bottle's closed or there's whiskey in the glass in front of that person or that group, we're always looking for the sort of common denominators to try and help convey and express the sensation of the aroma, the flavour and the texture of the whiskey. And the way we do that is we usually lean into things which are quite familiar, like foods, fruits, vegetables, plants, flowers, things that we've experienced and banked in our olfactory memories, basically since we've been born, which helps us ascertain what is edible, what is toxic, am I going to enjoy this, am I not? And the further some people get along their whiskey journeys, or if they have a very sensitive palate also, they can actually bring a whiskey to their nose and say, ah yes, this reminds me of eating bacon and brie baguette in the south of France in a lavender field at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in 1997 with the rain beating off my head. Now, the person sitting in front of you might just be holding the whiskey going, I have no idea what you're talking about because I don't know what lavender smells like. I've certainly never been to France and I've never eaten a bacon and brie baguette, maybe because I'm a vegetarian. So ultimately, we can get a little bit too specific with tasting notes sometimes and either confuse people or make them rethink their life choices about sitting in front of us trying to have a whiskey. And, as an example, I was actually in India many years ago doing a whiskey tasting. And as we're all nosing the whiskies together, I'm like, yeah, this is your classic Christmas cake sherry bomb. And someone just looked at me and went, what the hell is Christmas cake? We don't get that here in India. And so I had to rethink things a little bit and just say, okay, well, maybe this is more like your local, what's a local Indian dessert? Something like kheer, for example. It's like a creamy rice pudding with dried fruits or something like that, trying to make it a bit more relatable. But at the end of the day, there are lots of other ways you can go about describing whiskies to someone that doesn't rely on such specific tasting notes. Because, for example, when you're nosing a whiskey with someone, you could actually try doing something a little bit more alternative and talk about music and sound and say to them, does this remind you of a heavy metal song? It's loud, it's fuzzy, it's relentless, it doesn't really stop. Or something a bit more ethereal, it's a bit like a plinky plonky xylophone sound in a cave. So, effectively, there's different ways to do it. Is it loud or is it quiet on a very basic level? You could get into colors as well. If that person leans towards more of a synesthesia experience, you could say, are you getting more red? Are you getting more yellow? Is it dark or is it light? And so, depending on that person's experience as well, if you've just given them a 49.5% ABV whiskey, chances are you're going to want to add in a little bit of water as well, because bringing down the ethanol is effectively going to lift out more of the flavors for them too to actually experience. And then once they actually put the whiskey in their mouth, you could say to them, well, what sort of sensation are you getting? Is it round or is it spiky? Is it soft or is it hard? Is it hot? Is it cold? All these different ways, which are, something we all get specifically, is a little bit easier for them to understand. And let's say, for example, you're working in a whiskey shop and you've only got a minute or so to spend with that person. Using 3 flavors is always a really good way to go. You could say, well, this specific whiskey has flavors of vanilla, tropical fruits, and maybe a bit of cinnamon as well. And effectively, it's not that complex. The person's probably going to go, okay, I get what that is going to taste like because I understand those very specific flavors. So what it really comes down to with things like tasting notes is there are alternative ways to talk about whiskey that don't involve a very specific memory for you, but something that person is maybe going to understand. Or if you want to go off-piste a little bit and try things like music, sounds, and different textures as well, that might help them too. So it's all up to you how you go about creating these different sort of descriptions for people. And realistically, we all come from very different walks of life. There's 195 countries around the world. Everyone has very different experiences growing up. So you've got to think of it a bit like, English. The fact that some of us, English is our native language, but for other people, it's not. So you've got to find different ways to communicate with that person. And that's the fun thing about whiskey too. When you're in a room full of people, we're all going to get something a little bit different, which is effectively why whiskey is so much fun. And that's what it should be. You should be communicating in a way which doesn't make them feel silly because they're not getting what you're experiencing. Just figure out a way for them to understand what they're experiencing.